Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night, and I can tell you we have got an awful lot of planks to get through between now and the next hour. This is the one show you don't have to worry about judging anybody on because we do it all for you. Alex Phillips returns. Very good to see you, Alex. Will Geddes is here. Reem, Ibrahim as well. And to return to Steve Daniel from Virgin Radio. Very good to see you. Alex, let's kick off with you because you're going to talk about some border force types.
Yeah, poor old Adrian and Joanne Fenton. They went on holiday to France in their motorhome. They're from Essex. They've got a lovely, shiny, caravan, and they go over to France and they come home to Heybridge and hear some knocking and rustling, and they're sort of, getting everything out and unpacking. And
they're towing something.
Migrant.
They're towing something behind them, aren't they? Some kind of, one of those.
Where they put their bikes and stuff.
Where you put stuff in it.
They put stuff like trailers.
Right.
And out pops a lovely little migrant. Ta-da! Like a rabbit from a hat. And so obviously they're like, oh, hello, mate, you probably shouldn't be in this country.
Yeah.
We better report this.
Yes.
Big mistake.
Right, because they were the ones that ended up getting punished.
Because they've been fined.
Yeah, they've been fined.
Why?
They appeared...
For trafficking a migrant.
Yeah, well, as somebody pointed out, it's the first fine that's been affected to a smuggling gang. So Keir Starmer could now say, I've
intercepted
smashed the smuggling gang from Essex,
This especially sticks in my course. So I actually know someone who, when we used to work over in Brussels as MEPs, he used to drive his car over to Strasbourg when we had Parliament there, so get the ferry over.
Yeah.
And he had one of those roof things, where you can keep storing...
the thing that folds up.
I don't know,
I know,
giant briefcases.
Yeah, you put stuff, more stuff. What is it about people that want to take more stuff on holiday?
He's got like 1,000
George
kids,
Carlin used to do this, a great
They've got lots
thing.
of stuff they need.
People go on holiday, they take stuff that they've got at home and they put it in a suitcase and they take the stuff somewhere else.
So like a caravan then?
Yeah, and then when they get there, they take the stuff out and they put it all up where they're staying. And then
You don't
they take
need
the stuff
that much
back.
stuff.
You don't need stuff, do you?
Well, I'll tell you what you don't need, or maybe you could do with one. I don't know. You
migrant.
don't need a migrant.
Yeah.
But there he was. He opened up his roof rack thing and out popped a migrant. But thankfully...
Did he have a nice holiday with them?
Well, no. So with in this situation, this guy stopped off to get his duty-free in Calais.
Right.
So when he was putting his duty-free in the roof rack, see, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's proper stuff.
That's all right, yeah.
That's when he discovered the little stowaway.
Yes.
But this has been happening to lorry drivers for years.
Yeah.
That's the way they, the inspections now. Lorry drivers
But this is the bit I don't get right.
done.
And people said this to me, because if you are guilty, even if it's inadvertent, of bringing migrants in a lorry that you didn't know were there, you get fined. But the people who come in on the boats just get given a hotel room.
And those criminal
But
gangs
also-
are able to take huge amounts of taxpayer money as a result of it.
Yeah.
It's so
That's ridiculous. Well, let's have a look, because we've got
understand.
Adrian and Joanne Fenton. They appeared on Good Morning Britain this week.
I think we were not negligent. We did comply with it. We did do what was asked. We did check our vehicle. It is alarmed. We've done everything that you would reasonably be expected to do. So I think it's unjust and we shouldn't be fined.
Big fine, wasn't it? 1,500 quid, I think.
And so, but even if you...
1,500 quid?
Yeah. But even if you hadn't done all those checks and sort of went around and made sure no migrants in your vehicle, you still shouldn't
Well, why
be fined.
should you have to do all of those checks?
What I want to know is, now they've paid the 1,500 quid, do they get to keep the migrants?
Yeah.
Put him in another room.
Yeah, the garden needs a little bit of sorting out.
Get up the chimney.
Get down there, do the garden,
the
do
buy
the
slave
washing up.
market style. Do you mind now?
Now, you're giving me an idea.
It is extraordinary, because we can only assume that the migrant was taken away and given a hotel room
Oh, no
somewhere.
doubt.
Probably quite
On a
near,
mobile and benefits.
Yeah, quite near somewhere, the Essex coast, and maybe even a room with a view of the sea. I mean, who knows? Maybe
They must have been really
Clothes.
scared. Genuinely, that would be a very scary experience.
But
what
also,
if-
if that
yeah,
woman was alone, I mean, Alex, you'll agree with me on this. If that woman was alone in that van and then found out that this man had come over, I mean, you don't know what could have happened.
Be
I think
terrified.
it's absolutely
Well, presumably,
terrifying.
if you've got any kind of van, you're now going to be worried that they're jumping in the back. There could be more than one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that in Calais, certainly, they had fencing everywhere now, so that couldn't be possible to
Or
do.
there should be a search
so
before
maybe-
you actually get on the ferry or get on the Eurotunnel
Or,
to make sure that
here's a
there
better
aren't any.
idea.
And you could do that with thermal.
Here's a better idea. When a migrant pops out the back of your boot and you phone the police, they pick him up and they put him in prison.
Yeah.
And then
Or
send him to
better
a
yet, deport
deportation
them to where they
centre,
came from.
which will be like a
Or
prison.
put them,
and then you
alternatively,
send
put them in the
home.
back of another car going the other way.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You just send them back by return of post.
But this is the thing I still don't understand, because any one of us, if we went over to France on let's say we just got a boat for the day, sailed over to France, we all got on shore, we'd all be arrested, wouldn't we?
Yeah, probably.
We'd be allowed to just run free.
Well, I mean, if you said you were just visiting and having some lunch, I don't think they'd be too mad about it. I mean, we used to go on the ferry, you know, when before we had the dog, actually. We used to just go for a day, and we used to go to Carrefour's and buy a lot of bread and wine and cheese.
Did you get the dog to be a migrant sniffer?
Have a bit of lunch. No, we didn't bring the dog.
Yeah, but you had to have your passport.
Is that what you have the dog for now, to, like, sniff out if there's a...
Well, I'll tell you what, if you wander about in the woods of Sussex, you come across what looks like some sort of encampments where I'm sure migrants are actually living in the woods, because there's loads of parts of the south coast where you can literally get off a boat and just walk into town. They don't all come into Dover.
Exactly.
You know?
I've done that from Jersey, so going from Jersey over to the coast of France, and it's so beautiful. But this is the thing, the beautiful, lovely things that we all get to do are being ruined by these people that are effectively criminals.
They are criminals. I mean, I take the American view on this, the Trump view, which is if you've come to my country illegally, you're already a criminal.
You're a criminal.
Now
Exactly, as it should be.
And I'm going to lock you up and I'm going to deport you.
And also,
I'm not waiting for you to commit another crime.
The argument about asylum seekers doesn't apply, because if you're genuinely fearing for your life, and I've said this before, if you were genuinely fearing for your life, you would not leave the safe country that is France.
Well, do you know that guy
all the other countries you passed before?
The guy that came into the country who was the jihadist from Gaza, right? It turns out he was in Germany and France before he came to England, working to save the money so that he could get the boat to England. So he's not fleeing anything other than a job at Burger King.
Exactly.
You know, which I don't blame him for, to be honest. But anyway, Will, over to you.
Well,
you're going to do the controversial one.
While we're on illegal immigration, well, where do I start? So the implosion that, Mike, you've been covering most mornings on your show of Reform UK, which is, I think, a huge disappointment to everybody. Because we're running in now to about day 6, day 7 of the whole Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage sort of fight that's going on. Which, from what I can tell, all originated really from Rupert Lowe doing a podcast and saying that, referring to Nigel Farage as basically a protest march led by a messiah. Then all of a sudden these accusations were made or were lodged, or allegations were lodged against Rupert Lowe, obviously about bullying, about physical threats to his members of staff. And the problem right now is, I think so many of the electorate, so many of the general public here in the UK had so much faith and so much hope in reform that they were cohesive, they were working in tandem, they were agreeing with each other.
And also they weren't like the two main parties.
Well, exactly, yes. And you didn't have to vote Conservative. You had that third option. And one of the key things was obviously about reform talking about getting rid and dealing with the illegal immigrants obviously coming into the UK. And Nigel has now backpedaled on that by saying doing mass deportation is going to be virtually impossible. So they've taken probably their USP, their unique selling point to the general public, and completely eliminated it. And I know Nigel, I've met him a good few times. Richard Tice, again, super nice guy. I haven't met Rupert Lowe, but everybody I know who has met him says, again, a very nice man. What the general public don't need to see is the dirty linen being washed in public. We need them to resolve their issues, not start calling the police, not start calling problems. I think that we're going to see a split. We're going to see Ben Habib, we're going to see...
well, I don't think Rupert Lowe... I mean, Alex will know more about this than any of us.
Alex will definitely know.
I know everything about
you know everything, I bet you do.
But Rupert Lowe is not going back into reform. He's no longer a reform.
Oh, no. But he will start his... Ben Habibi and him will probably set up their own party, I would have thought.
But there's no reason
I disagree with you, actually, on this. I think you're being a bit too conclusive on the whole story. Effectively, we don't know what actually happened when it comes to the bullying allegations. I have heard something
Come on, Alex.
that maybe insinuates the potential idea that actually some of it may have some truth to it. And so I think that we shouldn't be too conclusive, but thinking about it from a political standpoint, there's no reason why reform are now completely disregarded. I don't think that's true at all. I think many of them, and again, this is all of a comms issue.
They have lost some members, though, haven't they?
Yeah. They have lost some members, but they could potentially gain some. And actually, I think in retrospect, the mass deportation stuff, I think Nigel was absolutely right on.
He was.
You can't just mass deport people that are here legally and illegally, and that's what
And his explanation was that you can't do things which are illegal. You can't send people back to a country if they're actually British citizens.
Exactly.
And that's true.
And I think Nigel was absolutely right on
But I think that's the key point. We're not looking at those that are legit.
Having got all
those legitimately who have entitlement to be in the UK, and like you said, asylum seekers who have legitimate reasons for claiming asylum, absolutely nobody has a problem. Nobody has an issue with that. We're a multicultural country. We're built on people migrating into the UK for various different reasons.
Not the way they're doing it now, though.
Not how they're doing it now. And I think really in terms of the key issue of today, which is obviously nominating them for Plank of the Week, is the fact that they're doing all their dirty washing in public right now. And the problem is it's going to skew their message in such a bad way.
Let's have a look at Nigel Farage talking just this week to Sky News Australia.
You build something up and somebody else thinks they can do a better job than you. So I think it's no secret he'd like to be leader. He thinks he's going to be the next Prime Minister. He even said to a group of us the other week, I will destroy anyone that gets in my way. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm in the way. And to have said what he said just 2 weeks before nominations go in for the English County Council local elections to attempt to spread demoralisation amongst our thousands of volunteers who are out there getting ready really is a very, very bad thing to do.
So, Alex, what can you tell us?
Alex.
I know there will be things you won't be able to tell us.
Yeah, there's a lot I can't say.
Right.
But
what can you say?
But what I would say is, look, I've known Nigel, I've known been in all the parties he's been part of, UKIP, Brexit Party, now Reform UK. I've seen a similar pattern take place this time round to 2015. And my very firm belief is there are other forces at work. There are people dripping poison into other people's ears. There's sort of meetings in corridors of Parliament saying, you should do this, you should do that. Did you know this? There are people doing the same within Reform. And I just would casually say the provenance of those people is not from Reform. It's from a party that probably doesn't want Reform to do well.
Of course.
Now, the problem is everyone's fallen for it, right? Rupert's fallen for it. Nigel seems to have fallen for it. So the dirty tricks being played on Reform are working. And they shouldn't at any point, you know, become victims of their own sort of passions and say, right, we're going to put something on social media, right, we're going to put something in the press. That includes Ben Habib. I mean, go back to running your business, Ben. I adore Ben. He's a good friend of mine, but he's just coming across as balmy at this point.
Doing more damage to the party ultimately than good.
It's not that this is the other mad thing. We're sitting here discussing this. If you look at the polling today, Reform are joint first in the polling, and a survey recently done on, you know, per people recognition, even within Reform UK, 75% of people who said they'd vote Reform have never heard of Rupert Lowe.
There's no doubt.
You know, put this into a context.
I agree.
There's no doubt that Nigel Farage is the rock star.
It's
of course.
There's
no point.
It's still a mess. And what's so sad about this is Rupert Lowe is brilliant, OK? He's a fantastic politician. He's a brilliant man. I adore him. Nigel Farage is brilliant. He's a fantastic politician. He's a brilliant man. He's leader, OK? That's not going to change. That's not going to move. If you look at the polling on who is Ben Habib, who is Rupert Lowe...
Nobody knows.
It doesn't matter, you know.
But that's why I disagree with Will. I don't think Reform are the planks. I think Rupert Lowe is the plank.
No, I'm not so sure about that.
It's just a whole load of
No, I think it's all...
I think to take one point of Reem's, which is about a comms message, any political party is going to be susceptible and they're going to be vulnerable to some kind of psyops, which is going to be misinformation, disinformation and the rest. And this is a real trial by fire for Reform UK in terms of having their dissenters and those saboteurs out there from other parties who want to try and destroy it, spread malicious messages, allegations and goodness knows what. This is where, to take Reem's point, their comms have to be absolutely on point.
Your comms have to be bang on point and your internal party communications have to be bang on point.
Correct.
And you know, sorry, I was going to say, you know that there's something going on in the background and behind the scenes, because I've had 3 opportunities to ask Tory MPs, you know, what they think of what's going on at Reform, and all of them say, we don't wish to intrude on private grief. So they don't say anything that could be quoted, because you know they're doing something behind the scenes.
But this is the thing, you know, I was speaking to the wonderful Alison Pearson at The Telegraph, who I think is just such a great journalist, and she was like, Alex, I can bang their heads together. And I said, my other half, who went to a private school, by the way, la-di-da, we had a croquet lawn, he said to me, this is so typical of public school boys. If it was two brothers, one would knock the other one's block off, then they'd have a pint together the next day. And it's the same thing that blighted the Conservative Party.
And I think that's why people are surprised about Lee Anderson's role in all this as well. Because what are they doing calling the police? I mean, it's ridiculous.
I know. I mean, the whole...
And I mean, that's the bit that makes, to me, this is the bit that makes them plankish, because what they shouldn't be doing is what all the other parties would do and go, it's an HR matter, we can't talk about it. No. We've called the police. What for?
Right.
Yeah.
Meet it head on, have a crisis management plan so that they can deal with it.
There are physical threats.
You don't call the police.
We don't know whether they are.
If somebody physically threatens you, if somebody physically threatened me, I'd call the police.
At the time that it happens, not 3 months later to write a press release.
Reem, one, you're a young woman, and that's fair enough. But I mean, you know, this is a 67-year-old man who supposedly threatened a 38-year-old man. And I mean, what's the threat exactly?
But even if all of this is true...
I mean, if Will Geddes threatens me, you know, I'm not going to fight him because he knows how to kill people with a bare hand. But I'm not going to report him to HR either.
Even if all of this is true, what you don't do is be like, bring high Met police. It's March the 10th. Right, something happen in December. Yep, okay, right. Let's send out the press release.
Yeah.
That is funny.
What I'm disappointed in is the fact that they do not have a crisis management plan. They do not have a plan for these kinds of events where someone is trying to split it up.
Well,
I think
we've seen it
in all sorts of places.
No, but I mean, it's never happened to them, is what I mean.
No, exactly. And they should have been prepared for this because, to be honest, they are, by all the other parties, the most hated. So inevitably, there were going to be other factors that were going to come in and try and
We're going to move on from this because we've got to, just for purposes of time. Is this resolvable, do you think?
Do you know what? I would hope
don't think Rupert Lowe's going back in,
I don't think he's going back in. I don't know, never say never, but we're 4 years away from a general election still. Let's hope this is a wake-up call and they can suddenly have a bit of introspection and say, OK, we really dropped the ball here. We got this wrong.
Exactly.
Because guess what? Politics is big personalities.
Yeah.
Politics is a profession of passions.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes in the Labour Party, behind the scenes in the Conservative Party, this stuff happens all the time.
Right. Yeah.
It is just endemic in politics. And what they're good at doing, because they're older and more experienced, is covering it up.
Yeah.
You don't just take it to Twitter and put it into press releases.
Yeah. But to the average member of the public, it's a mess, isn't it? And it's
I don't think the average person knows about it. I don't think the average person...
They see
They
enough.
do.
They
No,
see
because
enough.
Nigel
They see
Farage,
enough.
because of being on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, is a genuine celebrity.
Yes,
He's
Nigel
not
is,
just
but
a
nobody
politician.
knows who Rupert Lowe is.
Yeah, but
or
they
Ben
know who
Habib
Nigel
is,
is, and so they care about what's going on.
They care about the party, they know Reform and Nigel, and that's about it. I don't think they know anybody else.
Well,
I also think, by the
this
way...
week without hearing about this. It's been
Yes, in
every
politics, but
bulletin.
I've got to say I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. I'll also add, if Rupert Lowe was to join the Conservative Party, annoy some of the Conservative Party lefties, they all join the Lib Dems, what you could end up happening is having a Conservative Party that's a bit more to the right.
But the Conservative Party will be doing this.
Yeah.
And if Rupert thinks he's going to go there, he's going to have another thing coming.
Oh, yeah. They won't have him.
The three
But they've not ruled it out.
The three Conservative MPs who I asked again, a couple of them in the shadow cabinet, wouldn't commit themselves to say they wanted
they've not ruled it out.
They don't really want him.
They're playing games.
Anyway, listen, over to you, Reem.
Yes, well, St John's Ambulance.
Yes.
What they have done is they have issued some guidance where they've completely removed the word woman and they're instead saying how to do CPR and use a defibrillator on a person with breasts.
Right.
So we're not women, Alex.
I mean, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Wait there.
I'm not even sure I can claim that title.
Right.
Insane.
Yes.
Absolutely insane. And the thing that really frustrates me is when I was reading this story and looking at, okay, why is it that they were talking about this very specifically, they were saying that women are much less likely to receive CPR than a man, probably because of the awkwardness of touching that person's, their breasts. Let's call it what it is.
Let's call them what they are.
Let's call them what they are as a woman.
I'm a big fan of them.
And part of the guidance is if people, young transgender people have chest binders.
And they made a point of this, didn't they? Like, so
what?
trans man.
Binders.
So a trans man who's a woman who wants to be a man.
Right.
They wear these binders so that they flatten their breasts, basically.
Yeah.
And so they've given indications and guidelines as to how you deal with that if you happen to. I mean, surely you're just saving something.
Hang on, you're just going to the sternum anyway.
Dead, just get in there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Get in there.
I mean, it wouldn't stop me.
Yeah.
Well, it won't stop you. Well, the thing that actually,
You
I
give me
don't really
CPR
care
the other day,
about
somebody
that.
wasn't even unconscious.
I know.
thing that
They liked it.
Yeah, even if they're unconscious.
That's what you told me
I
anyway.
just contacted HR. I'm going to send out a press release.
Metropolitan Police.
I'm reporting you to the Met Police for microaggression.
Oh, indeed. The thing that really annoys me about this is actually just the erasure of the word woman.
Yeah.
And a lot of the
nonsense, isn't
what they would call the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, have been coming out against this, and I think it's absolutely right. I don't care what private organisations do. I don't care what they have to say about transgender people. I don't care.
Yeah.
What I care about is taxpayer-funded institutions erasing the word woman.
Yes.
And I think it's absolutely disgraceful, and we have to call it up for what it is.
Yeah.
It is sexism.
It is sexism, and that's the bit I don't understand because they're meant to be all about equality and equity and inclusion and diversity, except they're doing the exact opposite of that by erasing the word woman.
What pronoun do you think St John takes? Do you think he's a they, them?
They, them.
could well be
or
now. Now he is,
a bunny him, bunny self. Of
Yeah.
those these
The-
Caesar. Yeah.
I think it's almost a bigger issue as well, over and beyond the sort of declassification of woman as a gender. But it's the issue of actually confusing the general public. When you look at CPR situations as a first responder, it's going to be an immediate recovery or attempt at recovery of life and a pulse rate.
Yeah.
So if you're there going, ooh, hang on, she's got breasticles. Should I touch her?
Right.
Not. What? Is this someone who's
You're
got
trying to bring somebody back to life.
Do you want to demonstrate on Reem, like best practice?
You can do it on me if you want. I mean, you know.
You me, buddy.
I'm a bit moody, but seriously, if I'm fighting for life.
But primarily, it's a saving of life. So, I mean, it shouldn't really matter what. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's anything.
And that's a serious point here, isn't it? It's not only hilarious, but you've also got the element of the fact that most people aren't going to be understanding the politics of this, not going to get the sort of language.
I mean,
it's about saving people's lives.
Exactly. No woman is going to wake up having been brought back to life by somebody going, "Oh my God, you undid my blouse." They're just going to go, "Thank you very much.
Thank you for saving my life."
But medically, Michael, there was nothing wrong with me.
It also
I've never had that problem.
It does beg the question whether or not actually wearing those binders is actually a harm to your life. If something was to happen, it's much more difficult to resuscitate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't know whether you saw this week, but King Charles was practising his CPR technique on a dummy.
They're burnt into my retina.
You never forget those. Once you see them, you can never unsee them.
Steve, over to you.
Okay,
You've got Disney.
I'm going to go
the
with
showbiz
Disney.
correspondent, once again.
Disney is a disaster. Come on.
I love Disney songs.
Is that from Snow White?
No,
it's not, is it?
That's Aladdin.
That's Aladdin.
Of course. So this is the new, much spoken about, much speculated Snow White movie, okay? And it would seem that Disney's already, I mean, it hasn't been released yet, but they have zero faith in this new show, this new production. It's cost 270 million. It's the big remake. All the rumour sites gone completely woke.
It has. They've got no dwarfs in it, have they?
All the original
seven dwarfs aren't dwarfs. Is that right?
No, they are now.
Are they?
Yeah, but they're animated.
They're animated. They're kind of computer animated, and everyone has got. Who knows?
Well, they had this diverse group of dwarves, which weren't dwarves. They were various ethnic and minority groups.
And so then they decided...
And then
the dwarves are really annoyed because they're like, this is the only movie we can do.
Yeah.
That you've actually literally stopped us from making anything else.
It's the only movie that we really want to do.
I think half that budget, Steve, was probably for all the recasting they had to do and then the subsequent CGI and the animation.
But also there is this narrative, and you'll be amazed when you see this. This is Rachel Zegler, who stars as Snow White. She was talking about the movie and how terribly toxic the story is. Check this out.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince, or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story, just because we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all.
What is it about then?
Because they're ruining Disney.
Yeah.
They are literally ruining
and they actually
Disney
said,
princesses.
They actually said in a later part of the interview, basically he kisses her without her consent to wake her up.
Yeah.
That's the story.
Yeah. That's the John's ambulance wouldn't like to hear about that, would they?
No.
She's also, Zegler's supposed to be, Snow White is supposed to be prettier than the evil queen.
Right.
So why did they cast Gal Gadot as the evil queen, who is, I wouldn't have thought...
she's an attractive lady.
Is it because she's from Israel?
Oh, for goodness sakes.
She is, isn't she?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they do that subtext.
But she is very beautiful.
She's beautiful.
Back to Disney. Disney have tried to silence her. And she's saying, I'm not being silenced. They've cut the premiere, so there's going to be no premiere. And usually, with a Disney movie, because there's such big productions, usually a month before you can start, but if you're a punter, you can start booking tickets to go and see it. Yeah. You can't. And it's 2 weeks now until this film. So it's a bit like they know what's coming. The premieres happen. And first time ever behind closed doors.
Right.
I mean, a movie that's cost 270 million, they reckon if they're lucky, they'll make about 50 million.
And who are they aiming it at then?
Gen Z that, not me kind of Gen Z, but the Gen Z that don't like Disney princesses, apparently. This really upsets me, I've got to say. I'm quite heartbroken by this.
I love a Disney prince.
I love Disney.
Of course you do, Steve.
I love a Disney prince and a princess. I know you do.
I struggle to
and a princess, and they've totally ruined it. They've totally ruined the beautiful love stories.
Yeah, I know.
And in the name of woke, I will say, by the way, I think the reason why they've done all of this, they've sort of cut the premiere and they're not doing any of the pre-show stuff. I think it's because they've realised before, they've obviously filmed everything a couple of years ago, or at least a year ago, and they've realised that things have shifted. Trump is now president. Woke is gone, or whatever you want to call it.
There's a backlash.
And now there'll be a backlash, and they know that. They know that they've lost, and they've kind of been like, oh, hold on, we've spent all this money.
True,
so
good thought,
the great thing about the whole Disney stuff is that most of the films are about a woman. Cinderella, Snow White, The Little Mermaid, Moana. The Prince is just some guy that no one remembers. He's like a
They're the 2D
part.
character, exactly. Yeah. They're not even the main characters. The main character is
like,
a woman.
Who is the Prince in Snow White? I don't know. It's just some guy.
Some guy.
Yeah.
I know, it's absolute rubbish. I'm certainly not going to go and see it anyway. Now, coming up in the next bit, we're going to have Alex Phillips telling the future, which I think you'll find pretty amazing. And also, Jonathan Reynolds, you know that bloke who pretended to be a solicitor? Well, he's got something to say this week as well. It's all coming up on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I've got my first nomination now, and this guy has been in the news for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And in fact, you might even say this story's 10 years old, because 10 years ago, this guy, Jonathan Reynolds, got up in Parliament, believe it or not, and actually declared that he had decided to change his job that he did before as a solicitor because he wanted to be a member of Parliament. And it turns out that, of course, everybody now knows that he faked his own CV, he faked his LinkedIn, he also, Luke Johnson, you know, the businessman, said that he once had dinner with him and he spent an hour telling him how much he loved his job as a solicitor, even though he's never been a solicitor and he's only ever been a trainee solicitor. Well, this week he finally obviously was told, you better do something about this, mate, because he's now the business secretary, he's a member of the cabinet, right, and he's quite a senior part of Keir Starmer's team. And here's what he had to say about his situation.
Brilliant.
I made a reference to my experience of using our local transport system in Greater Manchester when I worked as a solicitor in Manchester city centre. I should have made clear that specifically, Madam Deputy Speaker, that was a reference at the time to being a trainee solicitor. This was an inadvertent error, and although this speech was over a decade ago, as it has been brought to my attention, I would like to formally correct the record.
It's been brought to my attention that I'm a stone-cold liar. So I thought I'd better try and get out of it.
I'm a bloater, and I've been caught out.
But even as he's explaining how he wasn't a solicitor, he manages to say, when I was a solicitor in Manchester. I mean, it's like he's got some kind of sickness. And I said this to somebody earlier today. I don't understand the mentality of someone who would pretend to be something that they weren't, first of all.
But
not just to pretend in your CV, but because people say, oh, well, everybody does that. Well, actually, no, everybody doesn't do that.
No.
It's a bit like saying you pretending to be a doctor or a pilot.
You know, the recent thing with the US election.
But saying that you're a solicitor gives the impression that you're somebody trustworthy, that you're somebody...
It's like I'm a rocket scientist. Actually, no, a trainee rocket scientist.
But this is
so did he ever train as a solicitor?
He was a trainee solicitor who didn't finish...
No,
he didn't finish his training. So he was never a solicitor. He never really operated or worked as a solicitor. He was attached to an office, I think, at some point. But it's a pattern, isn't it? I mean, Rachel Reem...
I'd love to do a deep dive on Keir Starmer's entire cabinet and look at all of their CVs and do all the research to see how many of them have actually embellished or lied outright.
But this guy's been lying about what he did for 10 years. I find that quite disturbing.
I think part of the problem is a lot of these new Labour politicians, and Jonathan Reynolds is not new, but a lot of these guys have never had a real job outside of the Labour Party, many of whom have started off as a Labour councillor and they've worked their way, they're greasy pole, they've worked their way up, and it's all they've done with their lives. I'm not saying that's the case with all of them, but it certainly is the case with many.
But I level this to you, Reem, because it ties back to what we were talking about earlier. One of the reasons the Conservatives and the Labour Party do this, be a spad, work in an office, be a spad, now be a councillor, stand in a rubbish seat, now stand in a safe seat. Is to make those people realise you belong to us and you don't get to speak out about
party loyalty.
It. But, and then what have we just seen in Reform? People who have, big life experience, entrepreneurs, industrialists, not used to being subjects, not used to being employees, not used to being staff. So,
I think it's a really interesting
that's why they do that.
And I think
that's why the major parties do it.
I think it's a really, really interesting point. I think it's a really important point because it does show that actually when you do have somebody that has done something of value in their lives, somebody like Rupert Lowe is an incredibly successful businessman. People that have done things that are actually of value in the private sector, when they come to politics, they can't be bent over backwards by the structures of a party. And that's a good thing. I think that makes Reform even more attractive.
It does. But, of course, what this tells you, though, is that they think that whatever experience they have got as councillors isn't really very good and it's not really, doesn't really qualify them to run the country, which is why the country's in so much of a mess.
Which is why they lie.
Steve, I'm not picking on you, but have you ever faked anything in your CV?
Do you know something? This is true. I've never done a CV.
Really?
I've never sent a CV.
Really?
Had a job.
I've always been lucky enough to, at the start, I knew somebody.
Win jobs on shop.
And then, people just kind of hear me, or they feel sorry for me, or I
That's how
buy
I get
dinner.
it.
Well, your voice is your CV, right?
Well, thank you. I mean,
Isn't
so
it?
I've never done a CV.
You've got a beautiful voice.
Can you sing again for me?
You're right.
Oh my God.
That's enough. That's enough of that.
Bring a card.
Pass the sick bucket. Alex Phillips, over to you.
Yeah,
Ministry
you
of
said
Justice.
Yeah, you said I was going to read the future, and I don't know how.
Well, I'm going to show you.
Oh, OK.
I'm going to show you.
I predict that in the future, loads of women are going to get sexually assaulted and we're going to be really broke as a nation.
Yeah, do you know, that's exactly what you said last year. Have a look at this.
A lot of women going about their daily business feel that their safety is being directly threatened by people who are coming from different cultures. And this needs to be discussed, because I've had enough. All my other female friends have had enough. When I put this stuff online, the number of comments online from other women saying they've had enough and saying thank you for talking about this. Was it not enough when we noticed what was going on with grooming gangs? Was it not enough when we see what's happened to the victim of Abdul Azadi? When are we going to have the conversation that women's safety is being mortgaged at the altar of mass immigration and this faux political correctness? Well, that went massively viral
It did.
everywhere.
And now you seem like you came across quite soft in comparison to what other
But
people
what's
say.
happened now is all these sort of right-wing male influencers who want clicks, and suddenly it's like when Ed Miliband put on the "This is what a feminist looks like" T-shirt. They're all piling in, going, women's safety, and rah, rah. I'm like, all right, hold my beer, sunshine, because.
And
I don't think you cared about this until you realised there were clicks in it.
Because what we found out is that foreign prisoners are costing us £1 million a day. There's now some plan to deport them all, which I'm sure will go horribly wrong.
Yep.
But also that foreign offenders are behind 1 in 4 sex crimes in this country.
Yeah, well, that's...
and they come from specific countries that we suspected they came from.
Right.
Yep.
And so all of what you said has been proved correct by the statisticians.
And now the sentencing laws have kicked in, and they're going to be given lighter sentences.
And all the lefties have gone very quiet, funnily enough.
Funny that, isn't it? Yeah.
What F's me off about this, it really burns my blood, is the fact that, I said this a year ago and there was all this, hyperbole about how awful and monstrous I am and blaming people with brown skin and this, that and the other. Now all of a sudden it's become the vogue thing to say. Now all of a sudden, statistics are being scared up where they've been concealed.
Yeah.
We shouldn't need to have statistics. If you're bringing someone in from a country where women get stoned to death and are made to dress up like ghosts and groping's a national sport, and then you put them in this country where women are told to wear mini skirts and plump up their lips and being a Kardashian is empowerment, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
You shouldn't need, after a year of someone like me being slagged off, to have to provide statistics on this.
I'm glad they have, though.
It's a bit like saying, oh, do you know what? I'm going to put some cyanide in this well. I'm going to put... And then 20 years later go like, let's see if there's poison in here. Well, of course there is.
Yeah.
You've been pouring cyanide in there.
You're going for
and
another
without
viral
sounding
clip,
Me
aren't you?
Too movement, this just demonstrates that women are not listened to.
Yeah.
Well, at least we have the evidence. We have the information.
I think
we
it's good.
know the types of people.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a good thing. I think, Alex, you're absolutely right. There are countless stories across the country of women that feel unsafe as a result of it. And I'm saying this as a woman that comes from North African origins, right? We know what the culture... We know that cultures are different. We also know that there are particular people from different cultures that do not assimilate into the UK, and they just do not respect women in the same way that we do.
Well, they don't respect women at all. And they shouldn't be treated as if they've got a different culture. They should be treated as criminals.
And since I said that, a year and a half ago, the situation when I walk down the street is even worse.
Yeah.
It's worse. My own neighbourhood has changed unimaginably in 6 months. You've now got half the shops on my little high street where I live are boarded up on one side. You can only get in and out of one door because people are on the nick. You go in, I went into the co-op the other day, and all of their steaks and lamb chops are in these little plastic containers with security locks on. We have to go take them. Because this has changed so rapidly. And now I walk down the street and literally this morning I went to buy some eggs. It's like, stay hanging here. It's getting worse.
Yeah, it is.
Yes. Rapidly.
It is. I know this from my female friends who've told me when they're just walking down the street, even in quite sort of what one could call sort of smart neighbourhoods, who are getting the constant sort of harassment on the street.
Yeah. I know it's ridiculous. Right, let's on to you, Will. You've got the RAF for us.
Oh yes, like our armed forces aren't suffering enough with minimal, half the amount of money being given to the MOD. A good chunk of that being obviously back pay.
Yeah.
and then comparing that to double that money being pledged by Keir Starmer to Ukraine for this never-ending war, which I'm really pleased Trump is now stamping on and trying to win. The recruitment numbers, I mean, right across the board, Army, Navy, Royal Air Force, all of them are suffering really bad.
Well, the Army...
And most of them are down by a third.
And lots of people are leaving, certainly the Army, because it's so woke.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it when I heard
that draws me very beautifully segues into my plank nominee for this week, and that is the Royal Air Force.
Yeah.
And the Royal Air Force have tried to include this diversity programme. And I'm so pleased all these diversity things are just completely backfiring, where they really wanted to make 40% of their pilots women, and 20% of that, 40%, I believe, they wanted to make sure came from ethnic minority backgrounds. Now, it wasn't about qualifications. I mean, there were some 300 young, albeit, excuse me saying it, white pilots, young pilots, who were denied being able to actually take their career further forward.
Didn't they all get compensation?
They did get compensation, which shows, again, an admission of guilt by the Royal Air Force.
It's racism.
It is. It's racism.
If it's not the Royal Air Force effectively saying, we're going to select based on race, if that's not racism, then please tell me what is.
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. So what's happened here is the RAF has now diminished. Now, let's throw into the tinderbox Keir Starmer turning around and saying, OK, we're going to supply pilots to Ukraine for air defence.
Right.
I mean, what pilots? I mean, even in World War II, we never had a shortage of Hurricanes and Spitfires. Yeah. We had a shortage of pilots, but we had all the aircraft. The problem is that the British government's also donating so much of our military equipment. OK, there is a churn to the new orders coming in. But again, equipment is low. The RAF, I have also heard reported, for the guards that they actually have on the gates at the bases are getting paid 60 grand a year because there are so few of them, and there are a few of them who want to actually do that duty. Ridiculous. So, you know, and when we go back some years in Special Forces, and Special Forces is suffering with their selections and the number of people who want to go in there, and there's quite a big transfer from the territorial versions, 2, 1, 2, 3 SAS and the SBS territorials, but fundamentally, their numbers are right down. So our whole military force has been diminished.
Right.
Why throw this diversity thing in as well?
At the time when they said
when we're probably at our greatest risk.
The world's very dangerous now, so let's
talk
about diversity.
Yeah.
What?
So I recently spent some time in the Falkland Islands, and I went to go and it was amazing. Beautiful place, beautiful overseas territory. Thank you, with all the penguins. There were 2 penguins. Really lovely. And I spent some time with veterans that fought in the war in the Falkland Islands in 1982. And they were saying this exact point. I mean, it is really, really concerning that we are unable to defend our own country. If we got invaded today, we would not be able to defend ourselves, let alone fight a war like we did in the Falkland Islands, where British people lost their lives in order to defend British territory. We would not be able to do that today. And the fact that money is being spent, so much money is being spent on state-mandated racism, I think is absolutely abhorrent.
Absolutely. And now, of course, we're spending money to give our territories away. But we'll come back to
Chagos.
Another
time. Another subject.
Coming up, it still hasn't happened, that deal. I don't know what's going on. Coming up, Reem's going to be talking to you about the Revolutionary Communist Party of Cardiff. And a bit more showbiz from Steve Denyer. We'll come back after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're more than halfway through, and I've got some very, very good nominations still to go. Up to you, Reem, to tell us about this Communist Party.
Yeah, so this is the Revolutionary Communist Party at the University of Cardiff. It's absolutely insane. I think we've got the party leader's speech that we can take a look at.
The final demand is for student and worker control of the university. It's the students and workers who run the uni, not management on sky-high salaries. If you agree with the demands, then you should vote for me for Student Union President. I would use my position to help build a movement by linking up the struggles of students and workers across the uni, across the higher education sector, so we can kick capitalism out of education once and for all.
Bet open first week. that her first name's either Chamomile or Tamara.
Probably, and probably privately educated.
Or Arabella.
I cannot tell you how angry young communists, all communists, make me. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if those students were ever in a communist country, they would be sent to the gulag because they are educated. Anybody with an ounce of value is sent to be killed. Communism is not a fun and cute ideology. It is as bad as Nazism as it is worse than Nazism. It has killed more people than Nazism.
Right.
It is absolutely insane. These young people are ridiculous. We can laugh at them. They're insane. But more than 50% of 18 to 34-year-olds believe socialism is the ideal economic system. So we have to fear for our lives.
That's because they've been
here.
told that when they were at school.
Yes, they've been educated to believe that socialism and communism are ideologue. I just cannot believe these people cannot look at history. There's my colleague Christian Niemitz wrote a book called Socialism, the Failed Idea That Never Dies, effectively arguing that if you look at every country that has tried to implement a form of communism, they have resulted in millions of people dying and millions of people going into starvation as a result of the poverty that's occurred. I cannot underemphasize it enough.
They did look a bit thin, to be fair.
They did a bit thin. Probably starving.
Probably all
They are
vegans.
probably
Student bar hadn't opened yet.
Presumably they're all vegans.
I'll also say there seems to be a problem with student unions and young people that are all coming together and thinking that capitalism is the enemy. I bet that video was filmed on an iPhone. I bet that all of those people wearing lovely Levi jeans that are also, made under a capitalist economy. Capitalism is freedom. It's a free exchange. It
You
is
know
what makes us wealthy.
I don't really mind, because if you're going to be a member of the Communist Party, I suppose you have to do it when you're at university, don't you? Because that's the only
Don't they
time
always?
you're stupid enough to do it. The only worry I've got is that nowadays they grow up
and they're
they get
still
jobs
communists.
at places like the Bank of England.
Well, they become our Prime Minister.
And they
or in a hedge fund.
or the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's also a communist. You know, and they're all kind of, you know, they don't grow out of it, and that's the worry now. Because I mean, when I was at university, I think I started the Young Conservatives Club just because there wasn't one, just to wind people up, not because I particularly cared, you know. But I mean, you know, people that take themselves that seriously. I mean,
I just don't understand people who've got time to be in like political clubs at university. I was,
I
you too busy drinking cider.
I loved it.
I was drinking and going to this little nightclub called Clute 7 days a week, especially on sports night when the hockey team or the rugby team or the rowing team or the football team or the athletics team. I mean, basically, there was a team every night. Well, no, else I
That's what I heard.
That's quite an admission.
That's a heck of an admission.
Oh, God, no, not like that.
You know, Wednesday night's the rugby team, Tuesday night's the hockey team, Monday nights the swimmers are in. You know,
sports nights out, and so you just go
what goes on at
stuffing men in the club.
Stays on sports.
Stays on sports.
Stays on sports.
Exactly.
What happens includes
night, Alex.
can we
I want to hang out with you.
Okay, well,
All right.
how about we go visit Durham University? I'll show you Wednesday nights.
I mean, you're all probably too young to remember Citizen Smith.
No, I remember.
TV show.
Power to the People.
Power to the People. It was about this guy who lived in South London who was
Wolfie.
Wolfie Smith. Just a complete idiot, basically. But used to walk around preaching, you know, Power to the People.
And he had his Che Guevara T-shirt, his beret.
Called people
A literal
fat all the
murderer.
time, you know.
Che Guevara, literally a murderer. This is insane. You know what's insane? These people will literally celebrate the birthdays of Lenin. Lenin, who was, again, literally a mass murderer. It's as bad as walking around with a Hitler badge. I'm sorry, but it's the same thing, if not worse.
It's bad, absolutely. Steve, over to you. Back to Hollywood.
Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes.
It's Rosie O'Donnell and it's Donald Trump, and the pair of them have given me so much joy for about a decade now. So the latest is Rosie. You know, loads of celebrities threatened to move out of America if Trump got in.
And they never do.
Rosie O'Donnell's done it.
What?
And she's moved to Ireland. There was a TikTok video saying,
Just
hey
one more
guys,
migrant in
I'm
Ireland.
here. And it would seem that
One more asylum
everybody,
seeker.
apart from those in Ireland, are happy about it.
Well, I mean, I don't think she's going to find Ireland quite so fun as America is when she sees what happens in the winter.
Exactly
you know, when it gets very dark and very wet, and people don't want to see each other or talk to each other.
So there was a press conference with Donald Trump, the Prime Minister of Ireland, and a reporter said, how comes Rosie O'Donnell's been let into Ireland? I don't think Donald Trump knew about it. And he was like, has she? This is amazing news.
Great news, Well, I think we've got both of those clips, so let's have a look at Rosie first of all.
I miss my other kids. I miss my friends. I miss many things about life there at home. And I'm trying to find a home here in this beautiful country. And when, it is safe for all citizens to have equal rights there in America, that's when we will consider coming back.
She's literally left 5 of her kids, though.
She's just self-identifying as a channel migrant.
Yeah,
an Irish one. Coming up next, my famous last nomination will be a couple of podcasters that you might have heard of. This is Bank. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're nearly at the end. We have to do the final furlong. We have to decide whether it's going to be reformed. Is it going to be reformed? It could win it for the first time. They've never been nominated before. I quite like the idea of old Jonathan, what's-his-face as well, Reynolds. But this is a good one. You might have seen Rory Stewart and Alastair Campbell together doing a podcast.
No,
right?
thank God.
Unbelievably, quite a lot of people seem to watch it and listen to it. But this week they absolutely outdid themselves because they decided it'd be a really good idea to go and interview Ahmed El-Sharaa, who some of you will know, and there they are with him, who's a former jihadist and terrorist who now is in charge of Syria, having operated a coup on Bashar al-Assad.
Butchering Christians.
Butchering Christians this week as well. Bit of that, just for good measure.
Nice.
And just because he's wearing a suit there,
he's had a glow up.
You don't actually change the leopard and his spots. And people said, with that picture, isn't that an absolute disgrace? Imagine Ahmed Al-Sharaa standing with a war criminal and having his picture taken.
Yeah.
Of course, that's Alastair Campbell.
And the child catcher.
Yes, exactly right. Now, here's a bit of video that you might remember, Alex.
We're going down a rabbit hole, and this is a pointless debate.
That's because you all talk such rubbish when you come on these programmes.
Excuse me, that's just unnecessarily rude.
But it's true.
You should be so
I'm sorry.
arrogant. And it's very rich, a man who essentially was part of telling lies to invade a country, to accuse me of dishonesty.
I think you might have lost the argument there, my dear. If I may patronise you even more. Honestly.
No, that's it now.
Yes, I will.
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
it. No, that's it.
No,
That's
sorry.
it.
You bring these people on, you never challenge them. You let them talk utter rubbish about Brexit. And it's happened on the BBC for year after year after year.
OK. I am not going to take that from you.
She actually was quite good there. That's one of your fine
good on Victoria.
I don't know what Chuck's doing here. He seems to be turning this into the Alex Phillips.
I know, I love this. It's like the ghost of Alex past.
It is.
All my many Alexes.
I know.
Is this your show?
These are some great.
This is your life.
These are some great clips, though, and he's an absolute bully. He's a
horrible
ghastly
man.
individual, and the
My
idea
dear.
that they went and interviewed this bloke, and it was discovered that they'd done this interview shortly before, as you say, started butchering, dozens and dozens of Christians in Syria because he doesn't agree with what they want.
Yeah.
And apparently it's all revenge killings.
And they're a prescribed terrorist group.
And they are a prescribed terrorist group, and he is a terrorist.
Yes.
It's as simple as that.
It is.
And when you see them interviewing him, Rory Stewart sort of gazing into his eyes like he's some kind of, lover.
On a hot date.
Yeah, it's like I don't understand how anyone can take them seriously. Alastair Campbell, a man who is so rude and awful and ghastly and who took us into a legal war and duplicitous and a former alcoholic and all the rest of it. I don't care what I say to him. And Rory Stewart, who has never got anything right in his entire life. He gets everything wrong. Told us all, Kamala Harris, put your house on it. She's going to win the election. Nobody's measuring it. I'm measuring it. I know what.
Is he homeless now then?
Well, no, he's never homeless because he goes and knocks on people's doors and sleeps on their sofas. You remember?
He's got no self-awareness,
Yeah.
this man. All of his political campaigns. Do you remember in the Tory leadership thing, he sort of took off his tie and sort of weirdly sort of pulled on the end of a stool.
He's really weird.
And
He's another public schoolboy, isn't he?
He did this boo-hoo the other day after US aid was being cut. Yes. And he said, my wife Shoshana has this amazing charity called Saffron Mountains or something like that.
Yeah.
And they had
Basket
$1 million.
weaving.
And then there was another $1 million pledged. And then you find out that this blimmin' charity, its job is to try and tell women in like niqabs that a urinal is modern art.
Oh,
What?
Seriously?
Yeah.
And also there was
So they're just transferring the money.
But there was a bit
They're
of...
just trousering the money.
Well,
a great example of a
we
waste
should probably
of
say
aid.
at this point that we don't know that they're trousering
Well,
the money.
no, allegedly.
You can't go around
Maybe
telling us that people do
modern
that.
art is
but
expensive.
certainly it's an awful lot of money to teach people to basket weave in Afghanistan, which is the other thing they do, which is all very weird. It's time now to pick the plank of the week, though. I'm sort of leaning towards reform, I have to say.
Yeah.
I don't want to upset them too much because they are quite good friends of ours.
They do sort of deserve
I think they kind of
and I
are the
love
planks.
them.
I think sadly they've misstepped badly this
Well,
week.
look, let's be clear. Does anyone looking at what's gone on the last week think, well done,
Yeah.
good work, brilliant?
Good work, guys.
No.
Yeah.
Or does everyone just think, you
planks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
because
it is
week. Yeah.
Because it is,
Yeah.
without any question, self-inflicted. It didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
They could have nipped it in the bud.
Yeah.
You know,
Everybody makes mistakes, but it's how you rectify those
Everybody
mistakes.
makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. It's Hannah Montana.
Oh, I don't know what it is. I was just getting involved.
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, you'll know who Hannah Montana is, won't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't.
I've only
I don't know what that is,
Is she
but
on
she
Yellowstone?
started
It's a very
dancing.
strange
I wanted
vibe
to get
going on.
involved. Thought I was in Clute. When's the rugby team here?
Anyway, we've run out of clips of Alex Phillips, so we're going to have to finish the show now because we've got nothing else we can do. But Plank of the Week, it has to be the Reform Party UK. Will Geddes, well done. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Thank you to Alex for being here. Thank you to Will Geddes. Thank you to Reem. And thank you to Steve Denyer. We'll see you all same time next week for more Plankery.